Hi. Good whatever time of day or night it is, wherever.
Right corner, notice that there's a button that you can click to set the microphone for your video.
Okay,
So this
welcome
is
back, everyone.
already
Okay, so now we move on to sort of disaster exposures that Sweden may have, and most of them have to do with climate, which the climate is kind of interesting because towards the south, the Baltic does not freeze over, so it doesn't get too terribly, unbearably cold in the large areas. Probably why people mostly live there. In Stockholm and most of the larger cities in that direction doesn't get much below about, I'd say, 20 Fahrenheit in the winter. But as you head north, it gets pretty brutal. So some of the exposure is flooding. The picture you see on the upper left of the slide is actually a train station in Uppsala. It flooded bad enough to where people were, as you can see, using floats in the train station. So they do get flooding. They do get pretty violent cold snaps, like I said, towards the north of the country as you head towards Finland in that direction. Um, Easily 40 below or colder in the winter, and one of the risks there is that Swedes just don't really worry about that sort of thing. They've seen cold before. They're very stoic Nordic people. They just don't really concern themselves much with it. So a lot of that is just having to do with education, how to prevent people from doing anything irresponsible during those weather events. And of course, when you have all these forests, you have also pretty strong forest fires. The strongest one they've had was back in 2018. Many thousands of acres got burned, but fortunately, the last 6 7 years it's been pretty mild in that as far as that's concerned. But that is definitely an exposure still. Like I said, huge, very forested country, so something they have to watch out for. And I'll see you at the next slide. So, what then is the structure of the disaster response system? It is definitely top down. The Swedish Civil Contingencies Agency, which is part of the Department of Defense, so kind of sort of military, is in charge of all disaster activity. Uh, Probably makes sense given that, again, population is very concentrated. There's really no particular reason to have, in my opinion, large disaster response assets that are decentralized just because they don't they wouldn't have populations to serve, at least not big populations anyway. Um, the lady you see is Dr. Gretzky. She is the head of the agency. She does not have disaster management experience. She's a management consultant by trade, and she's been in that position since I think 2021. So she is in charge of all disaster activities in Sweden currently. As far as the responding agencies, again, an interesting structure in Sweden. The fire service is municipal, so each city and larger towns they have their own fire services. You see the one from I believe it is also Uppsala in this photo. The police are a national formation in Sweden. It is part of national service. There is no municipal police. Ambulance service is also national, kind of similar to the National Health Service in the UK. And military assets, of course, also participate in disaster management. And of course, those of you that are car guys, when you looked at the ambulance in this slide, yes, it is very much a Chevy. They do use those in addition to European vehicles for that work. Again, as you can see, a top-down type situation where the centralized agency handles pretty much all major disaster responses. And I'll see you at the next slide. So, what are the challenges that they're facing as far as disaster response these days? Well, the good news is they don't have the problem of funding or of human resources. They have plenty of qualified people, and they do have pretty good financial backing from what I've seen in the last, I'd say, 15, 20 years. They've done pretty well as far as getting the equipment that they need and getting all the gear that they need as far as vehicles, as far as helicopters, so on and so forth. Um, as far as technology, not a problem. What they do deal with, however, is the issue of bureaucracy. And those of you who have not had the pleasure of dealing with European bureaucracy in general, you're in for quite a treat. I mean, we have plenty of it in this country too, of course, but boy, oh boy, in Europe, it's it's a whole different conversation. I think that's part of why they went with in Sweden. They went with a single agency for disaster response to at least, hopefully, concentrate that bureaucracy within only one, if you will, umbrella, rather than having to deal with 10, 15 different layers of bureaucracy. So that would be, I think, one of the bigger on the administrative side challenges. To get anything changed, to get a new procedure implemented, it's a whole big deal. And the other thing is the Nordic, if you will, stoicness, and they're just very hardy people, and they don't particularly expect to. Not that they don't expect that disasters will happen. It's that they don't think it will affect them much. So you see this lady in the second photo, the one that's ice swimming. Good luck telling somebody like that a cold snap is dangerous. They just don't think that anything bad can happen to them. So that's something that psychologically they've had to deal with for a long time, trying to get people to subscribe to preparedness in general as a good solid idea. Especially since rightly or wrongly, they don't get very many disasters. Honestly, like I said, the last major forest fire, even though it was very major, was in 2018. They do get flooding, but again, it's just not something that they worry about a whole hell of a lot. So I think that's definitely a part of what's been causing difficulties. It's just they're very tough people who just don't concern themselves with that kind of stuff too much. But in any case, that's what's been going on. I try to keep this as short as possible. Please leave your questions in the discussion. I will do my best to answer them, and I look forward to reading your presentations as well. Thank you.